So as someone who is brand new to the Souls series, a brand new player, someone who's not even that really good, I don't want to consider myself great, at games that are super challenging, what do I think now that I've beaten Elden Ring about the game, the whole experience? What would I rate it? This is going to be my super late review to Elden Ring, my friends. I wanted to take my time with it. I wanted to get through it, and it's obviously a very long game. There's a lot to see. Even then, I did not put as many hours as a lot of people did. I put probably 55 to 60 hours, which is still a pretty good chunk. I didn't do every single thing that there is to see. I did platinum the game though, so I pulled that off. But I didn't obviously destroy all of the 200 plus side bosses that are in the world. I did a lot of them. I've seen a lot of things. I'm sure there's still a lot that I haven't seen. But just based off of my chunk of time playing the game, actually finishing my very first ever Souls game, platinuming it as well, which I think is pretty crazy, to at least from my perspective. What do I really think about the game? This is going to be, again, my spoiler-free, honest review. Now, what I'm going to be doing is putting kind of generic gameplay and a mixture of some trailers in the background just to avoid spoilers, because like I said, I want to do a spoiler-free review. And the thing is that a lot of these areas are very magical, okay? I'm going to briefly touch on some of them, but I'm not going to go too much into detail, and I'm not going to show them. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to show kind of more generic stuff in the background because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled, at least to the best of my ability. Now, I will say, when you first launch into Elden Ring, it kind of made me feel like, listen, I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I love the Legend of Zelda series. Kind of gave me that feel of walking out of that shrine in Breath of the Wild and kind of seeing the great plateau and this huge open world in Breath of the Wild. It gave me that feeling. I honestly do believe that Elden Ring is heavily inspired from Breath of the Wild, especially the fact that when that game came out, a lot of fans were, of Breath of the Wild, that is, were saying that they wish, we would have kind of a Souls-like game with this style. Lo and behold, FromSoftware comes out and they're like, hey, let's make a game and let's call it Elden Ring. And Elden Ring is an absolutely insane journey. Let me put it this way. For people who are maybe on the fence thinking, hey, well, I'm a new player to this Souls series, and I really am intrigued by Elden Ring, but I don't know if I should get into it. I'm telling you, do it. That said, expect to die a lot. You will die a lot because that's what this game is about. This game is about dying a lot and, quite frankly, accepting death. Maybe there's a little bit of a moral story behind there. I don't know. But the point being is you will die, and you will die, and you will die, and you might get frustrated. But the thing about this game specifically is that because it is open world, if you're stuck on a certain area or a certain boss, you can go somewhere else. You can, obviously buff up your character, get some new gear, get some items to level up your gear, right? To strengthen your armaments or weapons. You can get, obviously more powerful armor. You can get all kinds of different things, right? You can go and farm some runes to up your attribute points so you can, have more vigor, which is your HP bar, more stamina, different things like that, whatever you're focusing on for your build. And that's the other thing that's beautiful about this game and all Souls games, is that there's so many different ways to take on these games. I've seen people posting videos and just sharing their experiences, and they've just been so vastly different. And again, it takes me back to the Breath of the Wild days where I heard everybody just kind of having a different experience, which is really unique in and of itself. And that's pretty fantastic. I mean, even just my own kind of friends that, I've been talking to about their experiences and whatnot, and it's just been so different. And part of that is obviously what kind of build you choose, but also that is part of, which path you take, because it is an open world, right? And you can kind of just explore at your own free will. You can find things that maybe your friends didn't find or other people. It's crazy. The world is absolutely massive. And with a massive world, what's interesting is that you have such different environments. Everything's pretty much, for the most part, connects pretty fluidly. I mean, sometimes you'll have an elevator that will go either from, a kind of ground level up or vice versa, underground. And that'll, kind of change the environment. But sometimes it's just kind of like crossing a border. And when you cross the border, the whole landscape changes from the, just the ground itself. Obviously in the starting area, you have more of a grassy kind of field-like, environment. Other places are more magical, more of a lake, more of a kind of a ruined desert kind of vibe, you know what I mean? But even the sky will change, right? So like you'll have like your normal kind of skybox in the starting area, but then in other areas you'll have everything from like a red sky, which looks really, you know, doomsday like, to you know, a snowy kind of sky. There's a snowy environment, which is really cool. You know, they have all these different kinds of environments that they all flow like perfectly and seamlessly together, but they all give you this different vibe. And every time you set foot in a new area, it feels so magical, and it feels so just like you're in awe. You're like, whoa, this looks nuts. And it's so visually appealing in and of itself. And that's just putting aside everything else that there is to the game. Obviously, there's so much to the game. Like I was saying about the builds, right? Obviously, this is not something new to Elden Ring, but obviously if you're playing like a kind of magic based character, that's going to be a vastly different if you're playing a melee kind of character like Vagabond, let's say, or something, right? With either using a great sword, or maybe you're more of a dexterity kind of style with twin blade or katanas or whatever else. And there's just so many different options to choose from and different ways to play the game, and it's just nuts. Now, don't get, you know, too caught up in all the elitism, as I would call it, of people that saying, you know, well, the game was not supposed to be played this way or that way. Hey, if it's in the game, it's meant to be played, okay? Whether magic is super OP and makes the game a lot easier, who cares? Experience the game the way you want to experience it. I went ahead and I farmed runes because I was like, listen, I'm not great at super challenging games. I'm going to give myself a little bit of an advantage, and I'm going to go ahead, spend some time farming runes so I can level up my character, get more attribute points, a little bit stronger, a little bit more defensive as well, and you know, just make it a little bit more of a smoother experience for me, so I enjoyed it a little bit more. And that's just part of the game, right? It's kind of like easy mode is baked in. Everybody's like, well, hey, we want an easy mode in these games. Well, there is sort of that baked into the game, whether it's summoning multiplayer people, because you can actually do that. You can summon other real people or join their world if you would like to, and bring them over. If you're really struggling on a boss fight or something, you could do that. I did that with like 1 or 2 bosses. One of them was a side boss, only one was a main boss. It was General Radon. If you know, you know. And that one was like, okay, you know, it's whatever. That said, there's so many different options to make the game a little bit easier on people that maybe are not as good at challenging games, and that's okay. You know, that doesn't need to be shamed, because there's just various different ways to play the game. So if you're on the fence, if you're a newcomer like me, I would say, hey, don't hesitate, jump straight in. You will absolutely love this game. Again, maybe you don't like challenging games. It may not be for everybody. That is something that to keep in mind as well. It's not a game that's necessarily for everybody, but if you love fantasy and, you know, you don't mind a little bit of a challenge, and, you know, you can expect to die, you know, a good amount, you know, coming into this, you know, say your expectations, you know, like not like you're not gonna not die, you're gonna die, and you're gonna die a lot. That's part of the game, though. If you can accept that, I think you'll have an absolute blast with the game. There's all these different dungeons. There's like these small kind of dungeons that have like these different kinds of puzzles. I would liken them to, again, if you're familiar with Breath of the Wild, I know I'm kind of making a lot of parallels there, but like the shrines in Breath of the Wild, right? They're like these mini dungeons that have all these kind of different puzzles, and typically some kind of boss fight at the end of it. And so those are unique in and of themselves. Like I said, there's like over 200 plus side bosses, but the thing is, the platinum, if you do want to get either 1,000 gamer score on Xbox or all the Steam achievements or all the trophies, platinum trophy on PlayStation, it's a very fair platinum. There's a few side bosses you have to do. I think maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 10 or something, but out of the 200 plus, it's not like a game that's going to be like, well, you got to make sure you do all of these things. You got to do every single dungeon. You got to do all this. No, you don't technically have to 100% the game to get, you know, the platinum trophy on PlayStation or whatever, 1,000 gamer score. So I think it's a very fair platinum. And that aside, like I said, it's just the world, the enemies. There's so many different kinds of enemies. I mean, if you're familiar with, you know, FromSoft games, then you're obviously kind of already acquainted with these kind of things, but there's just so much variety. You have a horse that you can ride on, obviously, that helps you traverse the world, makes it a lot easier. And the other thing is, fighting enemies on horseback, sometimes it just makes that fight a little bit easier. Now, if you want to make it harder on yourself, you can. That's the beauty of this game. The game is set up where you could make it easier for yourself, right? A lot easier in certain areas, or you can make it a lot more challenging in certain areas by taking on fights in different ways. Whether you don't level yourself up as much, you use kind of lesser weapons, you even go as a wretch, which you have absolutely no gear whatsoever. There's so many different things, and I think this game is really built to welcome a bunch of new players while maintaining what everybody has loved, come to love from, you know, the Souls games. And I think that they've done that very, very well. Again, as a new player, yeah, you know, I haven't played every single Souls game, but from my familiarity, my general familiarity with the Souls games, it seems like they've really executed that, and from what I've seen other people saying as well. So I think that they've done a really good job at this game. They've created an amazing atmosphere. The story itself, again, likening it to Breath of the Wild, there are certain story elements you could miss. There's a lot of interesting side quests that I think are worth doing 100%, exploring as much as you can. 100% you should, because there's so much to see, so much to do. It really is a quite magical and just fantastic, spectacular land, and I can't say good enough things about it. Did I die a lot? Yeah, if I had a death counter for my whole entire thing, which I kind of wish there was, I probably would have died hundreds if not thousands of times, but that's okay, because I accepted that that was part of the game. And again, if you get stuck on a part, maybe stuck on a boss, go somewhere else, try to, you know, buff up your character a little bit, do something else, come back to it later. The open world allows you to do that, and there's just so much to it. Like I said, there's so many ways to tackle on these fights, to take on all these different kinds of areas. It's really cool. The bosses are all really unique in and of themselves. They all they all present a different kind of challenge, from some of them, you know, being maybe a little bit easier for certain players, and maybe that same boss is a little harder for another player. It just depends on your play style, right? I could have had a really easy time with one boss, and someone else could have had a really hard time with that boss, and then vice versa with a different one. You know what I mean? So it's just built in a really cool way. There's so much to see. There's so much where you're like, okay, you know, I'm pretty sure I've seen the whole map by now. And then it's like, wow, surprise, there's this one area that you've never been to. I mean, I went back to the starting area towards the end of my playthrough, and there was one area that I had never been to, that I didn't even realize I'd never been to, because the game is that big. The world is massive. Like I said, it's just a really fun time. If you're on the fence, take it from someone who is new to the Souls series. This game, I think, is built probably the best game to welcome new players while maintaining that Souls kind of, you know, element that, you know, veteran players have come to love. It's a game that really caters to the veterans and the newcomers both alike, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. That said, if you don't like much of a challenge, it may not be the game for you. That's okay, but if you don't mind and you can accept the death, then 100% jump into this game, give it a go. It's amazing. All that to say, again, I'm trying to keep it spoiler free, which is why my words are being very generic, but the game's fantastic, and I'm going to be giving Elden Ring a perfect 10 out of 10. This game is an absolute masterpiece. I think it is most likely to be game of the year. I don't see many other games being able to beat this game. Ironically, I think the only game that could really compete with it is Breath of the Wild sequel, if it does come out this year. As great as some of the other games that have already come out, and some of the games that we're seeing that may come out later this year, there's a very small handful that I think can compete with it. Time will tell, obviously, what games come out and how they kind of perform, but right now, Elden Ring is sitting at the throne of 2022. In my opinion, I think it's a perfect game, a masterpiece of a game. May not be for everybody, but the game is absolutely crazy. It's magical. It was such a fantastic experience, and I honestly might go back in for a Journey 2 because it's that good. Loved it as a new Souls player. Just phenomenal game. I can't say anything more without spoiling the game. There's so much I would like to say, but to avoid spoilers, I will keep it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching my late Elden Ring review. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Have you played it yet? What are your thoughts? Have you beaten it? And if you have, what would you rate it out of 10? Let me know in the comments. Stick around for more. Be sure to subscribe for more gaming content. And until the next one, game on, and thanks for watching.